Hi, everyone. First, if you're wondering why a PR guy is up here talking to you, I wanted to assure you I'm not an airhead. I did actually start my career as a chief of staff to the UK government's chief information officer and went on to go and work on tech cases at the EU, ran Edelman's European tech practice, and ended up as a AI correspondent at a US outlet called Axios. So there's a lot of sort of tech background there, and I've now come full circle to work in-house at Robin AI. But my experience of AI is that the topic can be overwhelming for a lot of folks. So I will go through all of those practical use cases that Richard talked about today, but also hopefully engage in a bit of real talk about how to be a smart buyer of AI and to go through what AI really can and can't do for your teams. And we will go through sort of 3 practical use cases of how Robin is getting used out there in the market at the moment. To give you the context on Robin, we are actually a really interesting combination of AI expertise, legal expertise, and business expertise. And you don't always get that from AI providers in today's crowded marketplace. So we've got more than 100 human lawyers, paralegals, and legal engineers that work to improve the large language models that you've all been testing out or hearing about over the past 2 years. And we've been around since 2019. So what that means is that we are not stuck with sort of the legacy technology that you might have come across from a CLM provider, but we're also not people that sort of turned up into the marketplace yesterday. We're not gift wrapping ChatGPT and then telling you to deal with all of the errors that come from that sort of approach. And we've gotten to the point now where we have 13 customers out of the Fortune 500 list. So folks like GE, Pfizer, KPMG, UBS, and a bunch of asset managers, including folks like Cambridge University. And then what that is leading to is a situation where we are able to solve specific legal tasks and business pain points for folks. And you can save up to 90 or 95% of the time that you would have been using and deploying on those tasks if human lawyers alone were doing it. So let's sort of draw back the scope for a second and look at the situation today. You are dealing with a data deluge, and we are also seeing an extremely crowded generative AI marketplace. And the key fact that I want to drive across here is that LLMs, those large language models, are becoming increasingly commoditized. There are a lot of good ones out there, but it can be hard to distinguish between them. And none of them are good enough on their own to complete the sort of legal tasks that you're facing each day. We were hearing some of that from Richard previously, and I fully agree with it. And Nisha went through some of those examples as well. So I think it's really important to understand that most of the value that is going to come from AI to in-house legal teams is going to come from the specialized application layer, not from going to a ChatGPT or a Claude sort of situation. And those are the sort of tools that are being developed by Robin and our competitors. And the reason that I'm very certain of that is that you all know that if you're going to use AI, it has to be accurate. And you're not going to get an accurate tool if that tool is trained on random internet information. It has to be trained on legal data. And yes, you can get the support of a language model and all of the beautiful forms of language that we have put onto the internet, but that internet information on its own is just not going to be enough from you. We also know that legal services today have been relatively untouched by technology. Certainly compared to other business enablers like payments. Payments has been revolutionized over the last 30 years, and it's not accurate to say that about legal services. And while we know that legal services are a $1 trillion industry, really only maybe 1 or 2 billion of that is actually spent on legal tech that goes beyond sort of Microsoft Office. And so what that leaves is a massive gap for specialized generative AI tools to start to fill. And at Robin, we don't think that those tools are going to replace lawyers, but we are absolutely certain that already lawyers who use those tools are going to be able to perform faster and often to a higher degree of accuracy than people who are not using the tools. So lawyers using AI are going to replace lawyers that don't use AI, but it's not going to lead to some kind of mass end of legal teams. And I think the good news is we're now getting to the point where a lot of these AI tools are starting to mature beyond the hype. We're starting to see really clear use cases across a lot of different legal and business functions. And this is really important, the implementation costs have started to decrease. So it's getting to the point now where it doesn't matter how small your legal team is, you are able to cope with those implementation costs of diving into that scary world of AI, which is what I would now like to do. So we think that the current state and the immediate future of legal AI is in analysis supervised by humans. We don't think that it is realistic for autonomous AI agents to complete complex legal tasks, certainly not in the next 1 or 2 years. And that's important because there are people out there now starting to claim to offer those end-to-end services. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but you need to treat them with a skeptical eye. And we think that the cutting edge of what's available at the moment is multi-document report creation. And that's what our Robin Reports product is, and I'll show you that in a second. And alongside that, you see increasingly sophisticated tools for interrogating your documents. And that comes across in our ecosystem as a product called Query. Now, products like Query do have quite a few competitors out there, but we think that there's no real competitor for the Reports product that we have at the moment. Something we launched in June because we have a deep partnership with a model provider called Anthropic, which is one of the big rivals to ChatGPT and OpenAI. We've already been able to update that product with new models, and that's just only been in the last couple of months. And it's gotten such traction that about 8 out of 10 of our inbound requests now are about this Reports product. So I want to sort of show you how that Reports product works. And this little video that's coming up next lasts for about a minute, so I promise it's not too long.
Robin AI Reports Builder enables everyone to create a single or multiple document report. Leverage a template from our library, customize it to your specific requirements, or build a report from scratch. Questions and topics can be customized and ordered to your requirements. You have full control over the permissions around your reports. Easily share your report. Choose whether you'd like the output in Word or Excel, and whether you'd like to include citations. Our secure, reliable, and trusted approach meets the requirements of enterprises around the world. Robin AI's approach is flexible and versatile. Robin AI customers have seen time savings of up to 98%. Grow revenue, increase efficiency, and improve your employee experience with Robin AI Reports.
Okay, so what was the tech behind that? It's a combination of a large language model, and we have a set of them that we use from Anthropic that has then been fine-tuned with our own machine learning models that we make and we train with proprietary data and with synthetic data at Robin. And it's trained on contract clauses, and that helps with pattern recognition. And the standout feature is that it can detect and describe patterns across thousands of documents at once and provide you with a single report about those documents. And I want to spend the sort of next 7 or 8 minutes going through 3 specific practical uses that we've been able to do over the last 3 months with this technology. So Cambridge University's investment team is actually in a really tricky situation. They manage about £5 billion in assets, but they don't have their own in-house legal team. And they don't actually have a very large legal budget, which might be surprising given everything that they're dealing with there. But their problem is a lack of appropriate resources for handling all of these legal challenges. So they have to screen these investments, but they don't have lawyers on tap to be able to do that. So they need to be able to digest hundreds of these complex legal documents. And until now, their choice was to do that slowly and manually and with a pretty high error rate, or to punt all of that work to expensive external counsel. Now that they've been using Robin Reports, they're able to screen those documents 98% faster, like we said in the video, than when their non-lawyers were doing it. And instead of running out of their legal budget, which used to sort of happen around about August or September each year, and that would really not quite grind the investment screening process to a halt, but it makes your life very difficult if you can't perform your core function from September onwards. We're in November now. They haven't run out of their legal budget this year. They're continuing to screen their investments. Now, second case study is probably a little bit more relevant to you and your in-house legal teams. And that is something that we hit upon over the course of the summer, and that's dealing with incident responses like data breaches. Now, cyber attacks today, they're not just common, they're expensive, they're reputation damaging, they can come with regulatory problems and fines, and most organizations honestly don't have a good routine for dealing with that sort of fallout. My own personal example here is last month I got a letter in the mail about my health insurance data being compromised in 2022. I mean, for me, that was a pretty sad joke. I mean, what am I going to do with that information 2 years after the fact? I already don't like my health insurance company, certainly don't like them now. What was the point of that letter? But by finding ways to harness generative AI, we can evolve how crises like a big data breach get managed. And that puts your team, it puts legal in a completely new situation. You can perform the role of being a seamless coordinator in responding to that sort of crisis. So instead of being the bottleneck, you can be the enabler and the coordinator. How? Well, the bit that we play here is by helping you understand your contractual obligations to customers and suppliers. And that sounds a bit obvious. I'm sure everyone wants to feel that they're on top of all of those obligations, but the reality for a lot of teams and organizations is that stuff is spread in a lot of different places. Everything hasn't been done as nicely and seamlessly as we would like to think in our minds, and that becomes obvious when the crisis hits us. So the situation we found in summer this year was that we had an American biotech firm who had been a customer of ours since 2022, and they discovered that they had been the victim of a major attack. And their first call after calling the IT department was to call us. Now, they'd been a customer of Robin since 2022, but they were using our product for sort of very routine document analysis. They were reviewing NDAs, for example, or checking defined terms. But the stakes were much higher in the case of this data breach. There was going to be a big PR problem if this wasn't handled correctly. There would be lost growth opportunities as all of the teams were distracted dealing with the breach. And there was going to be a risk of federal fines. And the scope of this situation was having nearly 10,000 contracts, enterprise-level contracts that they needed to review, and they needed to form an action plan for meeting their notification and their data protection obligations, and they had to satisfy the concerns of both the CIO and the CFO in that process. Now, the estimated time for manually identifying and extracting and summarizing all of the information in those contracts and then manually populating the reports tables was going to be about 45 to 60 minutes per document. That would have taken them probably 3 or 4 weeks. It would have cost them more than £2 million, and it would have meant unmet obligations and probably a bunch of at-risk client relationships. But instead of scrambling a massive and expensive legal team on the weekend, because it happened on the weekend, they first decided they would try to see if Robin Reports could solve the problem. And that was backed with our managed services team. So in addition to this software that we are able to sell you, we also offer a managed services team. So human support for using the software and checking how the software works if you would like it. And in a case like this, that support was necessary. So what the software and the team were doing were analyzing 30 different contract types, including supplier agreements, master services agreements. They were coming in both PDF and Word formats. And here is something that you probably don't think about until the crisis hits you. The specific clauses in question were not consistent across every document type. Sometimes they weren't even labeled as data breach clauses. Sometimes they came across as data protection clauses. They would be in different parts of all of the different contracts, which obviously, as I've said, came in different formats. And you had a bunch of expired contracts that you needed to build into this to figure out, okay, where are the priority problems here? What are the different timelines that we have to meet? And no one had kept track of all of these things. So our approach was to identify the 50 most critical customers, come up with an action plan, and go and meet those obligations within 24 hours. The second stage was to move to twice daily stand-up meetings to coordinate an action plan for the other 9,000 or so documents out there, and to do that within 72 hours. And so the initial processing of all of those contracts and understanding what was in front of the team, we got that done in 4 hours. And the real standout from what we were able to achieve there was that Reports goes beyond simple keyword searching. it understands the context and the implications of the document. And it can provide comprehensive obligation summaries with clickable citations. You all heard Nishad talk about the problems with not being able to come up with citations and potential hallucinations within an AI model. So having an easy way to verify the AI's output is important, because the AI still will make mistakes. Like, to be very clear, humans need to be involved in using our product. That's the only appropriate way to use the product. But you need a quick way to do that verification. And the overall result was saving about 93% of the time taken to complete the tasks, and a cost saving of around 80%. And as and as you saw from that earlier slide, it was very clear that the CIO felt the company was in an impossible situation, and it was only with the support of technology like this product that they were able to meet their obligations. I've got one final example, but we're getting towards the end of time, so I will try and be quick about this final third one. And it's around the EU's Digital Operational Resilience Act, or DORA. Who here knows about DORA? Okay, good, I think. Who here has their compliance plan ready ahead of the January deadline? Okay. One very organized person here at the front. Having worked on the inside of the EU, I know what's coming for all of you. So if you're not familiar with DORA, it requires that financial entities maintain resilient operations throughout severe tech disruptions, and to be able to demonstrate that they have a compliance plan to do that. Now, our case study in this situation was for our client to have them be able to review 750 third-party ICT supplier agreements, and to identify clauses that required remediation, and to generate a report which could then demonstrate their compliance with the regulation. The point here is not really DORA or something else. The point is there's always going to be more DORAs. So if DORA doesn't affect you, that's not the point. The point is you're always going to find yourself in a sticky situation at some point where a new generative AI tool is going to be able to help you out of that. In our case with reports, it helps you get to grip with your obligations without having to spend a fortune. But you can use our product for audits, for material risk reports, for regulatory compliance exercises. And if you have another idea of how you think something like reports could be used, please, we're in the market. Come and chat to me, come and chat to the Robin team out there, because we want to explore those new use cases. And then my final thoughts are around sort of implementation and partnering. We think our incentives are really aligned with your incentives as in-house teams, but using AI is not just about buying AI. You're going on a change management journey when you buy one of these products or use our managed services system. You have to think about process redesign. You're going to have to train the team at some level. You need to rethink how you're paying and who you're paying for legal advice. And then you're going to have to think about reallocating people within your own teams to higher value tasks. And all of that is manageable. And actually, some of that is great. It's going to allow you to perform at the top of your license and use more of your judgment and get rid of some of the routine tasks. But it all requires thought. And it can be a great opportunity for talent development. And we recently publicized a partnership that we've got going with a Bristol-based law firm called VWV. Now, they've been around for 210 years, exactly the sort of firm that you might think would be slow off the mark with something like generative AI. But they know that they're a relatively small player against some very, very big firms. And they saw training their junior lawyers, their trainee lawyers on AI as a way to compete for better talent. And what's happened, we found over the first 6 months of this training cycle, is that those junior lawyers are now really at the heart of the strategic development of the firm. So junior lawyers who would potentially be stuck in a basement somewhere or once upon a time be working until 2 a.m. on really sort of manual, tedious document review are now helping develop the firm's forward strategy. That is something that means they're not going to get burned out. They're going to be excited to be there. They're going to stick around for longer. And VWV has now got a bunch of new business opportunities that they wouldn't have had before. So the point is those folks did really well in thinking through what are the returns on investment of using AI. It's not just how did we make a process faster, it's how have we made a more sustainable team? How can we think of new opportunities by having that broader and more diverse team? And my very, very final thought is that, legal AI's emerging capabilities are real, but I really want to endorse what Richard was saying at the beginning. There are still very clear limits to what the technology can do. So just be wary of anybody who is promising you the world with this tech. The AI does work 24/7. It's going to get better as more legal documents are digested into its systems. You will get better at using it. So we are on a really strong upwards trajectory. But it's going to be a few years before the AI can really self-orchestrate complex tasks. You really have to think through who you're partnering with and that you trust them, because you don't want your data being handed off into an open system. You want to know, like with Robin AI, that we have a private copy of these models in our own secure cloud with Amazon, and that data is not going anywhere else. And you just want to be really on the lookout for making sure that your data is being respected in that way. But with that, I thank you and pass it back to Richard.
Thank you.